for the public is the proposed budget projection for the 04-05 school year. Just briefly, page 1 is a summary of the greater detail of pages 2 and 3. And it also, on page 1, the first column, it reveals the actual performance of the district from at June 30, 2003. The board adopted budget for this school year, the revised budget on April 26th of 2004. And then the third column would be the projection for next year. Now, as you can plainly see, it becomes very apparent that our revenues projected for next school year of $38,359,000 is short of the projected expenditures of $40,709,000, leaving an excess of expenditures over revenue of approximately $2.3 million, which will in turn wipe out our fund balance that we're proposing to carry forward going into the July 1st for the next school year. In our proposal this evening is a 1% across the board for all bargaining groups and certified and professional staff members, including all the lunch people, central office, and whatever. Everybody that would be entitled to a 1% increment. Along with that, our increases in our retirement funding, which currently this previous year was 12.99%, and it's going up to 14.87. That's a given fact, and we know that. But before I go further, and we've brought this to the attention of the board in the past, at June 30th, 2001, we ended the school year with roughly $8.7 million. In June 2002, it was $6.7 million, 2003, $5.1, and our most recent projection for ending this year is $2.3 million. So over the last 3 or 4 years, we've eroded our fund balance. So in effect, what we're taking away is our rainy day, our slush fund, to help us fund future increases. By design, it was intentional. The philosophy has been to maintain programs. In particular, this year, we're going into next, not to lay off, which we haven't done. There have been some improvements in terms of resignations from custodial staff, which we have not placed. We're trying to absorb the work into the existing workforce. Mr. Clark, through his department, does have some room for teachers that have resigned. We're still working through that. There may be some relief, but because of the certification, all the qualifications that teachers need with Education Yes and all of the programs administered to us, there's probably a likelihood that we won't pick up any certified staff, although he is still working through that.
5.5. I thought we were saving 5.5 teachers.
We are.
We are?
So let's please state it.
Okay. Continuing on, though, we have, over the last 2 years, had a foundation of allowance of $6,700. Going into the third year, which would be next year, that foundation amount is still at $6,700. So there hasn't been any increase in what the state has paid to us. In view of that, we still have rising costs, and we'll talk about this at some point in the future when it comes to food service. But we've also made some provisional cuts without seriously altering our delivery system, and by that I mean the instructional integrity of the classroom. The classes or the programs that we've cut have been roughly $460,000 for equipment, $186,000 for conferences, textbooks of $309,000, and library books of approximately $114,000. Those cuts going into next year amount to slightly in excess of $1 million. With these anticipated cuts and planned program redesigns, we still are anticipating that we're going to break even or wipe out our slush fund, if you will, for 04-05. The long and short of this is that while we maintain programs and try to keep in balance all of our current classroom situations, in 05-06, there's a very strong likelihood that we will have to have staff reductions. There's no other way. We've lost all of our rainy day fund in our fallback position because there isn't any. We now have eroded it. What isn't reflected and could be a possibility, if you'll recall, this current school year, we had proration in the amount of approximately $313,000, or about $74 a student. There's a likelihood that this could reoccur for next year, but we won't know that for sure until maybe November, when there's a revenue conference. Typically, they're held in January, where the state reassesses its position and how they've met their budget, and then based upon that, they either push back or offer something in lieu of some sort of increase. There's a strong likelihood, although not definite, that we may go through proration again next year, but we won't know that till we're well into our fiscal year. So we have not allowed for that, but I would just advise the board that there's a possibility that that could occur. This basically is an overview in a nutshell, if you will. On pages 2 and 3 are just an elaboration or further detail of both the revenue and the expenditures. I'd be glad to entertain questions.
Madam Chair, I have a question. Mr. Ruther, did I hear you say that, I think you named like 4 things that you said you were going to cut out to produce some revenues? I thought in maybe a few previous meetings that we had talked about discussing or coming to the board with where those cuts would actually be. So those decisions have already been made by you? I mean, because this is the first time I'm hearing it, where you're projecting the cuts are going to be or whatever you're going to do. We hadn't discussed that prior, so can you explain to me how that?
Administratively, we discussed this with the curriculum department, all the principals, Mr. Carmen, Mr. Clark, and myself. And there were some ways that we had to make some inroads to stay off, if you will. The impact of the wage increases, along with a 16% increase in our medical insurance, which is up from 12.5% of this year. And the rising cost of FICA. For every dollar we give, we have FICA on top of that we have to pay. There has to be some means or methods to either minimize the impact or the loss going into next year would be greater.
Right. I don't have a problem with that, but I'm just saying, when you were giving, your overview, that was the first time that we heard these particular areas. So I was just,
I think the thing that we've done, Naima, is that we have delayed some of those kinds of purchases. I mean, the kinds of things that are listed there are things that are going to have happen. And we had no really big textbooks adoptions or things like that were on the docket for this year. But we budget for those kinds of things, and probably 4 out of 5 years you actually do it, spend the money. So we were not making curricular changes, but doing some of the things you're suggesting without your advice and so forth. But we're trying to make it just as, it's very, very transparent, because we're not changing those pieces of what we're doing in the education of children. It's just holding back on some of the purchases.
And Joe, I don't have a problem with that. I just know that we had, you said that it's some stuff going to be coming, and we'll tell you about it and keep you updated. And then this is the first,
Well,
so that's.
And we've been doing this relatively recently. This is not, we see that our problem becomes bigger. We're losing about 5.5 teachers. We're losing 2 or 3 or 4 custodians. We're not quite sure yet, 5 custodians. Some of the things, and we're now finding out about the larger increases that we're getting. So we're trying to just slow down on expenditures. It won't help revenue at all. It just slows down some of the expenditures. And we've jumped ahead pretty quickly on that, and I'll take responsibility for that. We need to do that. We're still going to spend, and we're budgeting here to spend $2.3 million more than we're making this year. We just had to do that to make it work. I mean, it just doesn't work unless we do those things. I'd like not to have to use up all of that savings account and not have to curtail those. But I'm afraid when we come to next year, you really haven't seen anything yet. And we're going to probably have to put some of these things back in, just for the necessity of doing them, and cutting in other places.
Conference expense, and textbooks. We'll make allowances for replacements. Obviously, we're not gonna have somebody go to a class without a textbook. So there are gonna be exceptions, but generally speaking, we're not gonna fund textbooks. And with respect to conferences, we do have title funds or grant monies that, could be utilized for conferences. So, but generally, out of our general fund, if you will, we're eliminating that. That's not to say that if somebody went to Wayne County RESA for $30, that we would say no, because there's gonna be some exceptions. But generally, as a category within our general fund of expenditures, we're taking that out for next year.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
how confident are you out with the student membership for 2004, 2005? I see 4,221, now 16. I thought we were going the other direction.
Well, we won't know that until September. We know what our February figures are because we've already been through that, and that's an audited figure. But that's 20% of that amount. The big number is September, and that's 80%. And we honestly, Mr. Woods, won't know that until that fourth Friday.
So this is just a projection, right?
That's correct. But it's been
Thank you
fairly
very much.
consistent. So,
We've got a couple of good things happening. Avalon is gonna have 20 or 30 houses that are gonna have people in it by then. The subdivision, I can't recall the name of it, at the south end, Creekside,
yes.
has got another 20 houses that's opening up. Gateway is still building houses. And then we've administratively removing the special education out of the Mount Pleasant School to create more space for our alternative program to develop there. And we've had waiting lists there every year
Yeah,
at the beginning, so we think that
it's already started.
we'd love to be 43 or 4,400.
Yeah,
We're hoping for that, but we need to
45.
make a guesstimate. That's what we've done.
Now, the more students, obviously, the more, the more revenue that we're gonna have, so that would be a plus to us.
This is a hearing that we had now, and we will actually vote on the adoption of the budget farther down into the meeting, so.
One quick question. How confident are you in the state sources of income? I mean, are you making your projection based on what you really feel it's going to be, or are you still thinking, there could be, like you mentioned a minute ago, the additional cuts?
I feel fairly confident that the membership is all right, but I'm gun shy in that we may not have a proration, but normally I would say that wouldn't be a concern, but because we had it this year and we almost had it twice,
Right.
it is a cause of concern. But the downside of that is if there's an additional, if we lose more revenue, then we're gonna have to cut out more than what I presented to you this evening in order to make this work, because we have to have a balanced budget. We can't deficit finance. And so I'm showing you the more conservative but the positive side of that, if you
Okay.
will.
Are there any changes in the,
To the agenda.
to the agenda? Yeah, but if you don't have any changes?
No.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I would like to make a motion for the
Thank
agenda.
Thank you.
Support.
Support? Okay. Any questions on the agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Have a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve of the minutes of the June 15th meeting.
Okay,
Support?
thank you. Any questions on the minutes? Being no questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Mr. Clark, personnel.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. Members of the board, I have one personnel action for you tonight. It's a for-your information. It's the termination of employment for the employee that's listed on the second page, effective May 28, 2004. That's all that I have. Thank you.
Ruth, here, bills for payment.
Superintendent Carr, President Lamasi, members of the board, we have your review and subsequent approval for registers, check registers, in the amount of $616,905.15.
can I have a motion, please?
I would like to make a motion that we accept the bills for payment.
Thank you.
Support.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the bills? No questions on the bills? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. Next on the list is the adoption of the 2004-2005 budget report.
Can I have a motion on that?
I'll make a motion to adopt the budget for the 2004-2005.
Okay,
Support.
thank you. Any questions? Are we all exhausted on questions? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
And the next item that I have is the evaluation of the Sodexo food service operation that was requested by the Board of Education a few weeks ago. I tried to summarize, first of all, to share with you what the actual survey document looks like, and then the results of those surveys. There was approximately 2,300 surveys that were sent out, and roughly 1,700 that came back, so it's about a 77% return, which in my estimation would be a pretty good response, considering the numbers that went out.
Does the board have any questions for Mr. Ruthier on this survey?
Thank you for getting it out, though.
I just comment, there was a couple of things in there about the employees and so on. And it seemed like it came out pretty favorable as far as friendly service, those types of things. And, you know, those are our employees, not
Yeah.
those of the Sodexo company. I just thought that was significant, that the students recognized that our people were doing a good job.
Yeah.
On average, you can see that the results in effect are average, so probably that's a good thing as opposed to being less than average. I will share, however, with the board that Mr. Clark and I had a conference meeting with the Sodexo folks on this past Friday, and it was indicated to us that Sodexo was operating in a deficit and could not honor the price by which they bid for this operation. So they've proposed to me to increase the price pretty substantially,
We were only on it, we were on a 1 year with them, right?
yes.
Anyway, okay.
You're on a 5-year, but you gotta.
You can go up to 5 years, but this is the first year of the 5.
Okay.
So we go out for
I looked
bids
at this
again?
today.
Yeah, we're going out.
I would think we should go out for bids then.
Most
That's right,
definitely.
we should.
Yeah.
Because in
We
the
gotta
letter
get rid
that
of
they
all
sent,
those entrees.
and in their letter, it makes it appear as though, I mean, they try to say